Woo.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jay Rothman. I am the host of the show. Welcome to Real Men, Real Talk, Live. Welcome back to the show this evening. All kinds of crazy things happening here. Video decides to speed up, but as we take a moment here to welcome our viewers and listeners back to Real Men Real Talk Live this evening, I want to invite you, if you should hear something that you like or love, to tap your love button on your monitor and light us up tonight. We all could use it, and nothing but a little bit more beautiful energy, getting rid of some of that dense, dark energy that's kind of been sifting and shifting, at least in my world, for the past week or so or two. If you should have any questions or comments, drop it down into your comments or questions, and we'll do our best to acknowledge as many of those for you as possible. This evening's topic is episode number 123. It's not about me, or is it? And so in this moment, I want to invite Evis Love Heath, the man of the land from down under. Well, before we go there, I want to introduce Evis Love, the man of the land from down under. He resides in Australia. Welcome back, Ev.
Always a pleasure, my brothers and sisters.
And we have Mr. Jeff Fasano joining us live from Nashville, Tennessee. Welcome back, Jeff.
Always good to be here, my brothers and sisters.
And of course, we have Josh Richer, just coming in hot off the set of Sony Studios and Shark Tank. Welcome back to Real Men Real Talk Live. We have missed you, Josh Richer.
Seriously, I've missed you guys and this space and our weekly just drops and lessons and learning and this discussion, this beautiful discussion that we do together. And I truly felt a void these last 2 weeks, and I'm so excited and grateful to be back. So
we got to see you last week. Just as I was about to close this out, you showed up and I put you in the studio. But I am curious, before we jump into tonight's episode. Well, first of all, I could tell you that in between the three of us holding a boat afloat, also having Rachel join us for another episode, that was beautiful. But I will say this, it's not the same without you, your presence, and you bringing Josh Richer into the show with us. We missed you. I am curious, before we jump into tonight's episode, it's not about me, or is it? By the way, viewers, this is a topic that Josh actually brought up to us last week, right after the show last week, and he held on to it all week. And during our production meeting this week, it came back up. So, but I do want to ask you, Josh, if not now, maybe to weave it into the show. I'm sure there were a couple of lessons during this season while you were off working that came forward for you, as far as what did you learn about yourself that you didn't know before this season wrapped on for you and your business. Anything come forward for you here right now, or do you want to table it until we're into the show itself?
You know, on brand for tonight, there were several times that, others were, how do I want to say, like either taking things personally or creating a story. I had someone creating a story about me. They thought that I was talking behind their back, and it just wasn't true. And I approached them about it and said, look, that didn't happen. And they were convinced. They said, I saw you walk over there and you were waving your arms and it looked like you said, what the fuck? And I said, I didn't. I said, I don't understand what this is right here, but I need to run to the restroom real quick and I'm going to be back and I'll let you know what comes of this. And so it was interesting. It was interesting that this person was absolutely convinced that I said, after talking with this person for a little bit, that I walked over to one of my coworkers and said, what the fuck? And so it's interesting how people and the brain, we can create these stories about us and about, a potential attack on us, or that somebody's doing something to us, or that we're the victim of some outside source. And it just plain wasn't true. And it was hard for me to come to peace with that. It took me about a day. And I talked to that person again and said, look, are we okay? Because she was ignoring me and not, paying attention, and being really cold in our interactions. And I just said, hey, is everything okay? And it came up that this interaction again. And I said, well, all I can tell you is that this wasn't true. And I don't know any other way to convince you of that. So I'm going to let it go and be at peace with it. And I guess, you can do with it what you will. And so it was becoming about me. And there was, there was a lot of temptation from the outside source to make it about me. And I decided not to accept the invitation. And just sometimes we just have to let people think what they want, and we can't control that. And so there was my piece in
At
that.
any time, Josh, when you were going through this cycle, were you aware that younger Joshy showed up and he was kind of having to wrestle through his own
Sure.
emotions and feelings around it?
Sure, nobody likes being mislabeled, or yeah, of course the younger version of me was attacked in that moment and being called something that I'm not. And the first inkling is to defend, and I didn't like the feeling of defending because I hadn't done anything wrong. And so that didn't feel good either. And so just sort of worked the process and sat with all the feelings and decided that this had nothing to do with me. And so I let it go.
Beautiful.
I was going to say, brother, it's interesting. Had you had any confrontations with this particular person in the past?
A few, yeah.
There
So
you go.
Yep, I think it was rooted in something else.
Mm.
Yep, but
so what I just heard you say, Josh, is it really isn't about us. Usually, it is something that the other individual is going through, right?
totally. And
So
how
yeah,
often do we do that in our lives? We let that affect us and break us down in a day, or that permeates our thoughts, and it's like a cancer all day long, when you allow that in. And so honoring the separation, there's two sides to every street, and we can't out of guilt or shame or anything take on more than our half. It's just not fair. There's two people involved, and what's theirs is theirs, and what's ours is ours. And
what I am curious about, Josh, is when you approach this individual and opened up the dialogue on the back end, did you feel at peace with yourself? Did you feel any sense of empowerment, any sense of like you showed up for little Joshy and showed up as your higher self to not necessarily confront, but try to diffuse whatever was happening in that moment?
well, yeah, and these are awkward conversations in life, right?
Yeah.
So it takes guts to go there, because it could go nuclear and go south and not go the way you want it, and it could stir up something. And so it's not easy to have these conversations, but when we do show up for ourselves, and when we do step in our power and in our boundaries, that was basically me wanting to protect that younger part of me and say, look, I'm feeling awkwardness still. Is there anything we need to discuss? And and ends up that there wasn't, and that I couldn't change this person's mind, so I had to find my peace and let it go. But I felt good with that I honored the friendship enough, or honored the relationship enough over all these years to confront it one more time, to try and make peace, and then let it go.
Love that. I love that. Ev, you're in the top shelf tonight. I want to invite you to make some sense of what tonight's topic is all about. Again, tonight's topic is it's not about me, or is it? What is? What can you break this down for us and for our listeners and viewers?
I think our brother just did. Great job opening the show, my brother. So, yeah, no, feeling into Josh's story, you know, I really feel obviously we're going back to that inner child part of ourselves. As we can see out here in the collective, still, my brothers and sisters, there's a lot of activations happening. You know, these energies that we're going through at the moment are just absolutely molding and absolutely bouldering us to really get some of these emotions and feelings come to the surface so we can get on with it. We can get on with life. And what we're starting to really see is that through these projections and activations of people's, let's say, unemotional intelligence, we're starting to see so many more children in adult costumes come to the surface. So we've got to start to realize if we can come from that higher self, that more self-awareness space, then we as the adult, the healed inner child, the higher self, can say to that other brother and sister, you know what? I validate your opinion. I validate your assumption. Doesn't mean I have to believe it. And through these conversations at a much more higher level, we can start being able to agree on certain things that allow us to be in a much more state of neutrality. You see, through some of these interactions that we still have with closest people, generally with us, whether it's in family, whether it's at our job environment, or whether it's just someone down the street, we have these beautiful interactions to allow ourselves to learn a little bit more about where we may need to heal. Now, if that had really triggered our brother in a particular way where he took that on personally, that allows our brother now to go back on his timeline and ask him, where may have I felt that rejection? Where may have I felt maybe that abandonment? Will this person like me if I stand up for myself? Will they not like me? Whatever it may be, it gives us more self-awareness for where these triggers are starting to come from. So for me, you know, certain things that have happened within my life that may have triggered me in the past, they were coming from the wounded inner child. They were coming from that space where particularly a big part of my journey was all about rejection. So if I was rejected by someone or something, then I took that on personally. I really took that on as if it was my own. But like our brother said, some of these stories, these assumptions that really can be made up, they're not necessarily fact. So it really allows us to come back home to self and be able to learn from a higher perspective so we can allow other people, places, and things in our life to, let's say, vibrate on a much more higher level of awareness.
Beautiful, Eb. And there was one other thing that I struggled with in this scenario, and I want to get you guys' opinion on it. So when someone's just flat out wrong about something, they're feeling feelings, of course. They're convinced.
Bingo.
Right?
Bingo, bingo, bingo. Right there.
Right. So how do you honor what's not, I mean, because where I was struggling with was honoring their feelings because they're clearly feeling something, and not in my trying to tell them that it wasn't true, not trying to dishonor their feelings or offend them. However, it's just this weird, it's this awkward area. I don't know if you guys have any insights on that, but
Yeah.
And that's what I was saying,
You know,
brother. Like it may not be true. Sorry, Jeff, 1 second. You know, you're validating their emotions and feelings where they're at. Everyone, to them, it may have been their truth.
Totally.
All right. So we all have our truth. We all have our so-called wrong. There's just right and wrong. There's not right or wrong. So you've validated their emotions and feelings, but you not necessarily have to take them on and believe them.
And what came up as you were talking about that, Josh, is exactly that. So this person is feeling something, has a lot of feelings going through them. You could have just said, like Ev said, okay, I honor and value what you're saying and thinking or whatever. And but can I ask you a question? What are you feeling right now? That could do one of two things. That could provoke them or invite them to start telling you what they feel, or it could shut them up. And she'd probably walk away. It's a neutralizer. I've done it in the past. If somebody said something to me in the past, insinuated something, the first thing I would go back and ask them is like, okay, so what are you feeling right now? And they either told me what they were feeling, or they would say absolutely nothing because they didn't have an answer for it. So it neutralizes the situation right then and there, because what you're doing, see, the thing about it is when we go back to antagonists, there's part of her, Josh, that wanted to fight with you. Okay. So by you saying, oh no, that fuels the fight in her.
Sure.
And she's going to go back, yes, you were. And you go, well, no, I wasn't. Oh, yes, you were. And that happens. Then there's, a power struggle. And then you've got a power struggle right then and there on the set of your show.
Right.
Or you could say, wow, what are you feeling right now? You're my friend. I've been working with you for 10 years. Just tell me, I'm here. Tell me what you're feeling right now. Maybe we can move through it that way. Like I said, that would either be a neutralizer, or then they would go, oh, wow. And they would shift it. And then you would neutralize it. Then you would take the fight away from it. Like I said, that person might not even have a clue what you just said. And we go, and walk away. You befuddle them, and it would just be neutralized.
Okay. I want to shift us into another direction just in this moment and ask you guys to chime in here. When someone is in our space and they are struggling emotionally, they're upset, they're whatever is, they're not in that good space, and we take on their energy or their emotions and kind of make it about us. Is that coming from an inner child wound, or is that coming from, let's call it, the codependent behavior where we feel responsible for their, which do you think it is? Is it one, the other, or can it be a combination of both? And does the codependency actually, is that really just a symptom? Is it just, if we go deeper, is it the younger inner child wound that has us feeling responsible? Or who wants to take a stab at this?
Are you asking the question when we're with someone who is struggling in a moment, having issues of what's going on, is what you're asking? Is it, what comes up for me is that I've got to fix that person. I have got to take on all of that. It's my responsibility. I've got to take on that emotion. I might absorb it. I make it all about me. Like, I'm responsible for this, so I need to fix that person. Is that what you're asking?
A combination that happens, but then there's also the part of us that, on some level, it happened to me quite often before I started on my healing journey, where I'm aware now that a younger part of myself felt like I did something wrong, even though that circumstance has nothing to do with me. There's a part of me the part of me being that younger JJ, that in that moment felt like I did something wrong that created this mess with this person I care about. Now, what's interesting, well, I'm gonna invite one of you guys to just kind of break it down from your perspective. Is it a combination of both, or is it one or the other? Is it the inner child wound, or is it us showing up feeling responsible to fix that or rescue that person from their own emotions instead of giving them space to honor it and give them space to learn how to walk through it? Who wants to take a jump at it?
It's both in all accounts.
Okay.
I'll
If somebody,
disagree.
if you have somebody who's struggling, and then, or in the moment with them, and you start thinking that it was that you caused the struggle, even though you didn't, that's your wounded child speaking out of some sort of memory, that they're responsible for everything. It's a very narcissistic thing. And then in the same moment, you're not feeling that, but you're feeling that you need to fix that person, that you need to do something to change it, because maybe, quite possibly, it's starting to bring up something in you and mirror something in you in that moment. So I feel that I have got, and then you start to feel their feelings. If you're an empathetic person, you're starting to really feel those feelings. You don't like it. So I have kind of come to the rescue and fix you and take care of this. That both is wounded.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff.
The part that we've spoken about so many times on this show is standing in the adult place, creating a safe space for them to have their experience.
Beautiful. Ev, what do you make of it?
I think it's dangerous. I think it's dangerous to fix anyone, brothers and sisters. Look, as a coach and help many people, particularly through these emotional purging, I don't fix anyone. I facilitate their own healing. And, this is when we start to talk about holding space for someone. What you're talking about there, brother, is that we've got to be very careful between empathy and sympathy. You see, when we become sympathetic with someone like that, then we actually put ourselves in their shoes as if they're our emotions and feelings. Whereas if you're empathetic with a little bit more self-awareness, you understand and overstand their emotions and feelings, but you are not taking them on personally.
And that's the boundary setting.
On the last week's show, I shared an experience that I had last week. Something triggered some deep shame inside of me, and it was very deep, and I was going into it and going through the feelings. And I connected with a few people, and what I realized in hindsight, my little boy was trying to reach out to mommy and daddy to save them from themselves, put their arms around me and tell me it's gonna be all better. One of my friends we did a Skype call, and I laugh about it now, but he looked at me and said, "What do you want me to do?" And I went, it arrested me. And I went, he goes, "I can't say anything, nor will I to say anything that is going to make this all better for you." He was talking to my little boy. I didn't realize it in the moment, how brilliant it was. He said, "Do you want to speak and talk about it?" He said, "But there is nothing that I can do or will do that is going to make this better for you or save you or fix you. I can hold a space for your progress and healing through this. And I love you." And that pissed me off. It didn't piss Jeff, the adult, off.
Why did it piss you off?
Because, as I said, it pissed my 10-year-old off, who was seeking mom and dad. Now, my wounded 10-year-old, who would seek mom and dad to have them put their arms around him and say, "It's all going to be better. I'm here. I love you," which my parents never did or had the wherewithal to do that. So my wound came up, and my 10-year-old was seeking that from this friend, but he does a lot of this work. He knew that. And that's what happened. So he says, I love you. If there's anything else you want to talk about, he goes, and I really have to go. And I got off that call and I went, wow. And I got pissed. But as I moved through it in a day or two, I went, wow, he just gave me back to me.
There you go. There you go. Beautiful. I love that. Right. And ultimately, nobody has your answers. Nobody has my answers. Nobody knows, truly understands how to resolve or dissolve whatever emotions or feelings have bubbled up to the surface. I want to share with you guys, I had an amazing opportunity this week to face this exact topic. I was witness to a very rare, very, very rare exchange between my amazing partner and a situation that unfolded for her. And she got lit up. She got activated, as Sue Gaskin would say, or triggered, as we tend to say here, by something that unfolded, not between her and I, but between her and someone else. And it was really an interesting exchange, because I had to work through some old shadows that popped up for me in that moment. But truly understanding, it was almost like I was seeing myself there, but then I showed up here. And I realized that the way to navigate through this as her partner, as her friend, is to do my best to be more of a conscious observer and just ask her, like, is this something that you need from me right now? Can I give you a hug? Can I give you a kiss? And then give her space to work through it. And it wasn't something like she was able to work through even in an hour. It's been a couple of days. But the space I gave her permission to step in her own means of self-care. I mean, she grabbed the bike and that she hadn't ridden in a number of months and took a bike ride by herself. And, you know, the old me would have been like, hey, you want me to go with you? Or what about me? Why didn't I get invited? I would have, again, younger Jay, I would have spiraled into making her pain, her hurt feelings about me. And I was able to really, really show up in a healthier way for myself and then for her, because I didn't allow me to go down that rabbit hole of old thoughts, emotions, and feelings, and feel either like it was my fault or I needed to rescue her, but instead just honor her. Doesn't mean I don't feel sad for her. It doesn't mean that I don't feel a pain, because I've had to walk through my own triggers around this particular individual. And for me, I got to measure my own growth as a 61-year-old man. And it was just beautiful. It was absolutely, it's been a beautiful journey. Not that I can say it's been painless or joyous by any means, but what it has given me is an opportunity to measure my growth as a man that once was, codependent on steroids. And when I wasn't codependent, that little boy was always feeling responsible, like he did something wrong. And so it's showing me, as Josh, you're in a relatively fresh, young courtship, and learning how to navigate even in that relationship differently than perhaps how you have in the past. And so I love this journey, because we're going to be tested. And when we get tested, we have an opportunity to really, instead of kind of getting sucked into the vortex of that energy field, to really step back, pause, and then ask that individual, is there anything I could do to help you right now? And then give them this space so that they could honor their feelings and emotions and learn how to work through them and walk through them as their own conscious observers. So we get to practice what we preach in our own home this week. And it's been a beautiful, beautiful experience. Not one that I want to invite in on a weekly basis by any means, but what do you make of that, Josh Richard?
That was beautiful, Jay. Beautiful. I mean, all about removing ourselves from the equation, and just being there, holding space for your partner to work through it and run her process and do her thing. And lovingly, yeah, it's hard to watch from the sidelines sometimes, but we can't keep throwing ourselves in the game. It's not our game to play. And when, you know, and Jeff, I know you and I showed up that way a lot for a lot of years, jumping in the game and trying to get the love that came from that. Oh, I'll help save the game. I'll help save this. It's not our game. It's not our game, and it's not our fight, our battle to fight. So
right. And what I'm hearing you say, it's not our responsibility to rescue them from their pain. It's their responsibility as the higher self to let's say learn how to parent, how to cuddle, how to snuggle, how to work through and hold space and love the younger self that may have been triggered. And sometimes the younger self isn't necessarily in a child. The younger self can be the younger self from 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And the triggers that come up from our prior relationships that just smack us like a sledgehammer across the side of our face. And, you know, through the process of learning how to just trust and get out of the way, one of the tools I reached for was I think yesterday I went out into the wilderness twice. I did a morning hike by myself, and then I went back out in the afternoon, because that's what I needed to do to let's say detach, but also more importantly to give her that space that she's needed. And you know what the beautiful thing is? At least I will share this with you guys, because this for me is celebration. This is honoring. At no point did it go south for either one of us. I was able to honor where she's at, and she was able to honor where she's at without getting frustrated or irritated with me, because I don't believe I gave her that opportunity. And through that, you know, there was no mean-spirited words. There was no anger directed. It didn't get misdirected. And she's able to still work through the sadness in a relationship that in that moment had nothing to do with me.
Yep.
So, you know, we make it about us. We go down that slippery slope pretty damn quick for many different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so it's been a heck of a week.
Beautifully done. Beautifully done.
So what it really comes down to is it's really learning, instead of coming in from the egoic space, thinking that I have your answers, Josh, or I have your answers, Jeff, to give you that space for you to learn how to honor your feelings, your sadness, your anger, whatever is coming to the surface, and just meet them at their soul space.
Mm-hmm.
And get out of our own headspace where we make it about us, so that we could just honor them in that moment. And ultimately, isn't that what we need or want from each other? Ultimately, isn't that what gives us that safe cushion to know that it's always there?
Mm-hmm.
What do you make of that, Ev?
Yeah, 100%, brother. That's what I said. We've one of the 3 S's: safety, security.
Yeah.
You know, and really being able to be a bit more stable within our own lives. But if we didn't have that as the inner child, or as the child growing up, you know, we didn't have that guidance, or we weren't nurtured, it's hard for a lot of adults in this space now to actually know what it is to parent themselves.
Mm.
So we do need to go right back to that root as I always talk about, and really build our own self-esteem for this confidence. And if we haven't been able to be modeled that through those earlier days, it's tough for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So we may need to hold that space simply just to be in that safe environment for them.
Beautiful. Love that. And then the part of it that is about us is when we are triggered and what we do with it, you know, and that also that separation of them. And the other thing too is that, you know, no one can make you feel any way. We have to choose that. It's a choice. And so, you know, when we get angry and say so-and-so made me feel this way, made me feel that way, we have to take responsibility for that. We've decided, we've picked a story around that and made it about us. And so, you know, we need to be careful and watch our thoughts and watch our stories that we're creating and watch the stuff that is in us and on our side of the street, and make sure that's clean. And make sure that we're not inventing things. You know, the funny thing too is we often blame everybody else when we're mad at ourselves.
Whoa. Can you repeat that? I want to hear that. I want to hear it a second time so I can drop down deep in here. Say that one more time, Josh. Richer.
We often blame everyone else when we're actually mad at ourselves.
Deep. Evis deep.
So that is our side, and that is the part that's about me. And that's the part that we have to unpack and look at and sit with and honor that hurt underneath. And then, you know.
How do we do that? Josh, how do we do that? Give us an example.
I know. I'm trying to think of one. If you guys have one, fire up. Give me a second.
Don't think your way there. Come from your heart, man.
But you're talking about when we're angry at ourselves,
right?
We blame others because they did something to us. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Well, we basically it's a form of scapegoating. Like instead of us showing up and growing up and recognizing that in this moment I'm struggling, I'm in pain, I'm hurting, it's easier to deflect it and almost create something outside of myself with you so that I don't have to feel the pain. And then I'm almost like it's an egoic way. It's ego's greatest strategy to deflect or distract me from feeling what I'm feeling. Now I can get pissed off at you, and now I don't have to feel what I'm feeling within me.
I don't know, man. I'm the poster boy for beating myself up. So I tend to blame myself for what's going on with me. Which is one of my challenges in life to move through is that blaming myself for, you know, if I'm angry at myself, I blame myself. If I, you know, it's something that I'm learning not to do, which is still another level of self-love and honoring the self. You know,
there you go.
I don't think I've ever. We talked about it last week. I can blame mom and dad. Mom and dad might be dead for 10, 15 years. So, you know, it's easier now to blame them, and I can't call them and blame them for what I'm feeling. But, you know, that's another form of doing that.
Here's a small example. I caught myself last week. I was about a half hour late to work, which is forever in television. On time is late. But yeah, I was about a half hour late because I left the house a little later, and then the morning snowballed and there was traffic and all of that. But I couldn't blame. I wanted to blame traffic and other people. And so I showed up at work and I was a little bit shorter than usual. I was frustrated by things that were happening right away that morning. And I was not my best self. And I was short, and I wasn't angry with anybody outwardly, but I was feeling a lot of frustration and anger. And I finally stopped and I was like, where is this coming from?
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm angry at myself for being late.
Yeah.
And I can't blame all of these other people and things around me. And I can't blame traffic, and I can't blame, there was nowhere I could place blame. And that's why I was frustrated. And that's why I was short.
Yeah.
And so I had to look at myself.
Well, you
So
could have
I-
told
what
a
I-
couple of little white lies.
Right?
Yeah.
That came up in our production meeting this week. The little white lies, you know.
They were doing construction on my on-ramp. I had to drive 3 miles out of the way to get on the highway.
Yeah.
Well, what about the line at Starbucks was really moving slow because they had a new employee. So it's not my fault why I was late.
Really? Yeah.
Blame it on a Starbucks new employee. That's not even new. It's the manager that's been there for 10 years. But you know, Josh, what I heard you say is that at some point our life gets easier when we're willing to show up and grow up and take accountability for our choices that we make and choices that we choose not to make. Sometimes the best choice we make is when we do nothing and we just let it go. That's simple. That's not easy for people that have always been accustomed to trying to control outcomes. But sometimes the outcome isn't for us to create or determine. It's for somebody else to. It's for source, or the universe, or God. And when we are willing to let go of trying to control every outcome and stop making it about us, there is the beginning to what I call inner peace. I remember it's almost like yesterday, the day that I surrendered back in 2015, coming up on 7 years ago, around the 15th of October, when I had my first spiritual awakening as I lay in a hospital. And I just surrendered in that moment. I said, I'm ready to give it all up. My best way of controlling every outcome landed me hours from death. That's how strung up and strung out I was in trying to control everything in my life. And what I realized in that moment, there was nothing in my life that was in or under control. Everything was out of control.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And everything I made about me. And so I love this topic. I want to kind of switch gears here and move us right along here. Now this is going to be a tough one because the three of you are not parents, but I'm sure you have encountered a parent or two in your lifetime, and or maybe an uncle to nieces and nephews, to your siblings. But if you are a parent, are you seeing and then mirroring the behavior of your children with your own temper tantrums or emotional meltdowns?
Mm.
So we talk about in a spiritual community that, you know, when I get triggered by, let's say I get triggered by something that someone else says or does, and then we say, well, they're there just to be our mirror. What role do our own children play?
Well, maybe
in our life.
Maybe we could take that aspect out of it, because your child is just another human being having their process. They're triggered by something that will trigger something perhaps in you. So we can look at it as other people are triggered, and then we're looking at that. I bring it back to when I was a kid and I would cry, and my mother would go, "Stop crying." The reason why is because it triggered something within her, or whatever feelings that came up within her when I started to cry that she didn't like. So she made it about her in that moment. She didn't make it about me.
Beautiful. I love that.
What's going on? What can I help you with? What are you crying about? Immediately it was stop crying
Mm-hmm.
because it triggered something that she didn't want to feel inside of her. So it's about me. It was about her in that moment, not about
Yeah, there you go.
her child who needed her.
I love that. Jeff Asano, breaking it down right here, right now. I want to bring up a comment, and I'm going to invite Ev to maybe share some insights around this one. Jean Nicola says, yes, I don't like when my kids insult me and don't support me if I'm sick or going through healing. Ev, what's coming forward for you? Because I'll share what's coming forward for me in this moment. What do you think is at the deep root of when she's not feeling well and her kids? It appears, I'm going to paraphrase what I'm hearing you say, Jean, is that in that moment, you'd like your kids to have empathy for you. And instead they're insulting you and they're not supporting you in that moment. What is that? What are you hearing? What are you feeling in this? What is coming through for you, Ev? Can't hear you. You're not on mute. You are on mute.
Yeah, I've actually got a child sitting on me. Yeah, man, it's beautiful what she's saying, because she's actually saying, what it's all about. And, these beautiful little people that we have called our children, they are really beautiful mirrors for the healing, which she talks about there. So if she's feeling that she's being insulted, not being supported, a child's simply mirroring back to her what she feels about herself. And I know that's a hard one to take on, sister, but we've got to really start to become aware of what our children are mirroring back to us. Now, this may even take us learning on particular ways how we actually be role models for our children as they're growing up. Because I know for me, man, like simple things like really showing our children our own mistakes, showing our children how, we're not perfect, but these are some paths how we can move from being negative into positive areas within our lives. So for me, when she's talking about, if she's being insulted, that could also be, I know me, man, growing up, I was disciplined hard, man. And, if I ever insulted my old man or, didn't show that sort of support, then I know that it was probably just about beaten into me that I would. So whether there's a sign of respect as well. But like I said, these children are simply mirroring back to us what we're feeling about ourselves.
It's really interesting, Ev, because I have a totally different spin that came through for me. It doesn't mean that it's that yours is right and mine is wrong. It could be that we're both onto something, but this came through immediately. I don't know how old your children are, Jean, but what came forward, now this didn't come from my thoughts, this came from deep within at the soul level, an intuitive hit, wisdom, if I may, is that on some level, when you're not well, your children are not able to really communicate what their emotions or feelings are. They may not even consciously be aware of it, but maybe on some level, they're scared that mommy's not going to be okay, that mommy may actually get so sick she may die. Now that's an extreme, but we go to those extremes when we're children or when we're younger, even if we're adult children, if we haven't done some of this, what I'll call some of this healing work to come home, our children are scared. And when we're not feeling well, they may actually be in a trigger of their own, and it has nothing to do with you. But as a mom, if you're able to maybe even ask them, maybe in a loving way, you're able to give them permission to feel safe to open up and express what's going on. You could even ask them, are you afraid that I'm not going to be okay? Are you afraid that I may get so sick that I won't be here for you? This could just be one of those moments where they're like most people, we're not in touch with our true emotions and they come out sideways, like through anger. And anger is always not the first emotion. It comes out that way. But underneath anger is sadness
Fear.
or fear.
Or could it be, since we're teaching our kids, I don't have any kids, what have these kids learned to do that?
That's kind of, in fact, I wanted to ask you, Jeff, it was a beautiful, beautiful question. And I wanted to ask you that, Jay, from someone who was asleep and raised your children from that place and then woke up when they were older.
Mm-hmm.
Is it hard to watch them knowing that you gave them the old you? I'm not trying to trigger you in this moment.
But you might.
Is it hard to stomach the old you programs that you see or saw?
Yeah.
Is it hard? That's a brilliant, beautiful question. And I would say this is that what I get to practice every single day is acceptance and patience. And for me, the acceptance is that, I showed up as the best father that I could for my sons, all three of them, as an unawakened father in their childhood. And clearly I describe it as collateral damage. It wasn't intentionally that I was trying to harm them or hurt them, but they were impacted. And now as a more awakened father, my role is just to love them in their space. And then I get to step away and practice acceptance and patience. And at the core of all that is truly understanding that it's their soul journey. They're now going to have to go through the way I had to go through it. And all I get to do is hope and pray, literally pray to source that their awakening happens at a much younger age than mine did at age 54. And that's the best I can do. The other thing that I can do, Josh, is it's less about the words I speak because they're not interested in my words, but it's more about how I show up. And when I'm able to show up more consistently, or consistently than I had, that's how we get to be teachers today, mentors. It's less about the words we speak, and it's how we are showing up. Are we living what we're saying? And there's many people in the. Do I cat getting in the way tonight? Wow. No. Earth to Ev. But in any event,
cat being a cat.
I want to take a moment here to thank Jean Nicola for sharing from that moment right there. And it's an opportunity. I do think that we can ask questions, especially as parents, like, what's going on? Why are you feeling? What's happening for you? It feels like you're angry at me, or you're upset that I'm not feeling well. And it's okay to ask those what's called probing questions, so that if we're able to create that space where they're willing to get in touch with their emotions or feelings, they may not be today, but maybe down the road they'll be able to actually access that. And then that can open up the door for more intimate conversation that's got some honesty wrapped around it. And then we can honor that even with our own children. Josh, did I answer your question?
Yeah, and Jay, I wanted to say I hope I didn't pitch that too harshly, and I meant it with love and curiosity, not.
And even if you did pitch it in a hard way, yeah, I mean, that's okay. Once in a while, I don't mind being challenged, because I'm just going to speak my truth anyway. I mean, we do the best we can do with what we don't know.
Exactly.
And as much as I thought I knew, the only thing I knew was what was handed down. That ancestors line of what I call the BS, the belief systems that came from the home, that comes from the school, that comes from the media, that comes from church or temple. It comes from friends even. So in any event, wow. Guys, we're about 6 minutes before the hour, believe it or not. You guys feel like we tackled this topic tonight? It's not about me, or is it?
We might have left out the part where we make everything about us.
And the part also that, yes, brothers and sisters, it is all about you. That's the only thing the universe says.
Exactly.
You inverse.
Yep.
Take us there, Ev.
What does that mean? Yeah, can you break that down?
That's another show, man.
Really?
That's another show.
Whatever we're feeling in the moment, whatever is going on with us, whatever is coming up inside of us, that's all about us. Go back to what we opened with Josh and the person he works with. Whatever she was saying had nothing to do with Josh.
Mm-hmm.
It was all about her. Whatever she was surmising, whatever was being triggered, and all that good had nothing to do with Josh at all. And if we know that in ourselves, then we just say, hey, I know what I did. I know what I didn't do. I know what's what. But that's about you. We can chat about it. And also the thing that came up tonight, and we've all encountered this, and I think this is very important to remember. If we're struggling with something, and I always encourage people, and you've heard me on this show, I truly believe that we really can't do it alone. We could do certain things alone, but we need people who are quote unquote qualified or whatever, people who we know that is going to hold a space for us. But when we call somebody and say, can I share this with you? This is what's going on in my life. And then they say, oh, wow, that reminds me, that's going on in my life too right now. Have you ever had that come up? And then, or somebody say, if I was you, this is what I would do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And those situations, that person is making it about them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something else, because we've all had that happen and you're going, what? So it's really important to keep your eye on that. And that invariably is somebody who doesn't know how to hold space, that everything is about them, probably all the time.
And it was truly either the cynic or the poor me, the victim that never got picked in the school team or was bullied at school. That's that type of person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so that's that self-awareness where we can come in as the highest version of ourselves and be, aware that they are at where they're supposed to be on their own journey. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to hold space for them and validate their emotions and feelings right now.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The way in which to do this when someone is struggling is simply say, I'm here. What do you need?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to recognize June coming in from Canada. She just nailed it. She said, just listen. That is the most important thing we can do for those who are suffering internally.
Yeah.
Just listen. I will tell you guys that an angel showed up in my life right almost at the beginning of my rebirthing. And the strongest attribute that angel had, which she's like, she doesn't even know where it came from because she said that wasn't her in her past life either. She just listened. She just listened. And there were times like I wanted her to give me an answer. I wanted her to give me the solution. And she was like, I don't know what's best for you. This is something that you need to work through. She never, ever, ever once told me what to do for me.
Exactly.
The only thing she ever did in those first 2.5 years was she would just suggest maybe go for another walk, maybe go for another bike ride. She would just suggest that I get out of my head, get into my heart, get into nature, because that's where all the magic can unfold, is when we get out of a 2x4 structure with all these lights that aren't real.
Mhm.
Hey, you know, one other thing, I just want to mention this. When we are struggling, we've all been through it. And most of it, as we spoke about in our projection meeting, most of it is the wounded inner child, the wounds coming up, things coming up inside of us that we've been grappling with our entire life. What we all really want, and what that little child really wants, is to be heard.
Boom.
There it is.
That's
There.
all. Think about it, folks. Whenever something's struggling, all that wounded child who is never heard by mom and dad, or maybe anybody, just wants to be heard.
Yep.
So as we are over the hour, and Jeff, that was absolutely fact right there. And I want to give each one of you a minute here to put a pretty bow in a show and call it a wrap. Jeff, you want to stay with? Was that your wrap?
I'm done. Yeah, that
was
was
gold, man.
That was my wrap.
That
All
was
right.
gold.
Josh, let's pick a color for your wrap, for your bow, and let's put a wrap on it.
Oh God, Jeff, that was so beautiful. And I just want to let that land, because yes, magical things happened when I learned to honor and sit with my wounded child in those moments of triggering activation, to just sit and listen. It's supremely powerful. And so I'm gonna piggyback on you, Jeff, and that beautiful drop right here at the end, because that changed my life forever.
Mm-hmm.
Forever.
Beautiful. Ev, what do you got?
Yeah, beautiful show again, brothers and sisters. And as always, thanks to our brothers and sisters out there tonight. But yeah, just to finish up on my quick wrap, you know, for me, this path and this journey, I would say, on my path and journey to enlightenment that I keep walking, I do believe there are times within our lives that we do need to get used to being in our own space. So whether that means alone, remember it's different to lonely. I've always said that. Start dating your inner child. Write letters to your inner child. Do some art with your inner child. Go out in nature, like Jay's just mentioned, with your inner child. Start getting time and start really listening, like we're talking about, to this part of yourself. Because my brothers and sisters, at the very deep fabric of that inner child is your subconscious mind. I talk about it pretty much every show. Emotions, your feelings, your memories, and your past beliefs are all housed in that subconscious mind where the inner child sleeps and lives. But when we can start letting go and releasing some of this emotional purging we've been talking about tonight, and most shows, 123 shows deep, then the wonder boy or the wonder girl starts coming through, and we can start playing down here in this planet we call Earth.
Love that.
Love that.
Love that, Ev.
So here's my final thoughts, is that, you know, the title is not about me, or is it? And in that moment, in every moment, we either dip into the old behaviors that not only are harmful for us, but harmful for the person that is in front of us that we care about on some level. It's always important, as Jeff said, to listen, but it's also important. Part of listening is becoming a conscious observer, but it's also important to measure our own growth through that moment of discomfort as we are witnessing someone in pain, and not taking it on or hijacking their pain by telling our relatable story, as much as it is being present for them, acknowledging their pain, asking them how I can help in this moment, and then stepping out of their way so that they can show up and grow up for their own inner child and work through their process at their speed, not necessarily our speed. And then the final piece is we then get to measure, take a moment to measure the growth that you have experienced. What are the lessons that you have picked up along the way, so that you can honor the part of you that has grown up, that has shown up and grown up. And with that, I love you guys. We actually made it through without tears tonight. How's that Real Men Real Talk Live without a tear shed tonight? Jeff, any tears you want to share before we head out, or are you good?
Tears of joy, brother.
I shed a lot of tears last night.
All right, beautiful. That's all good news, man. Well, viewers, if you heard something that you like to love, I know you lit us up tonight on the board, but we also invite you to share it out with your loved ones, whether you're coming in from YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook. All of our playlist is archived on a YouTube channel. We invite you to subscribe there, so that if you are going through a rough patch or a rough day or a rough hour, just you have a place to go, a place to land. Go to the archive page, playlist, and look at the titles and pick a title that is resonating with you in that moment. Allow us to come into your universe, even if it is a replay. Maybe you'll hear something that shows up right on time. And with that, I love you guys. We'll see you next week. Peace and blessings. Have a beautiful weekend. Do some self-care. Get out in nature. Do a hike. Do a walk. Take a blanket. Go to a pond. Go to a lake. Climb a tree. Sometimes Mary actually does pull-ups on trees now.
How good is that, sister? How good is that?
Right? I get to witness that. I get to witness it and honor that. Oh, my. It doesn't get any better. I love you guys. We'll see you next week on Real Men. I'm going to cry right now.
Yeah.
There it is.
Ah.
There it is.